Do you think now is the worst time in American history? Do you? Because the American Psychological Association conducted a survey last year, and the majority of all living Americans above the age of 18 said that now is the lowest point in American history. Can you imagine that? These are living generations that went through World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, the crack epidemic, 9/11. These are people that lived through MC Hammer Pants. And they think now is the lowest point in American history. I don't believe it. I don't. But I do know that glad you don't either. But I do know that the perception of many can become the reality for all. And given my own background around stress, I have to think, if you think now is the lowest point, what does that stress feel like? How do you feel right now under that kind of stress? I imagine, because I know how stress works, you don't make good decisions. That instinct that takes over, that fight or flight instinct that takes over, gives you this very narrow focus. It's hard to lift up. It's hard to see the big picture. You tend to be emotional. You tend to be reactionary. You tend to be compulsive. You just don't make the best judgments. Sound like a country you know? So that's why I'm here. 6 out of 10 Americans in that survey said that they feel stress from social division in America. The majority, whether they were Republican or Democrat or independent, the majority said they feel stress about the future of our nation. So, I've got this mindset that I want to expose you to. I want you to relax, please. We don't need more stress. Just sit and relax. And I'm going to suggest and propose a way of thinking this through. A mindset that I think if we were all to use and adopt in our daily lives, I think that we could decrease our stress. We could decrease others' stress. We could decrease polarization in America. And I'm going to challenge you to try it out for size. So, to get started, as an interrogator, I'm going to make a confession. When I was living in Cancun, I know many of you have confessions to make about Cancun. I know you do. I know you do. Well, mine might be a little different. I sold Timeshare. Oh, some of you own some. Thank you. I sold Timeshare in Cancun. So for those of you who don't know what it is, essentially you got a free breakfast, a free lunch, and you got to hang out in a resort, and a guy like me would convince you over about 2 hours to give me $10,000 to $20,000 of your money, more or less, for something you never intended to buy. You didn't know you wanted it or needed it at all. I did that. I did. In the beginning, I thought it was all right. You know, I was selling a really nice resort. I was selling a great thing for people to enjoy. And then I started to realize I might be ripping people off here. I might be doing that. You know, I'm not selling a vacation dream. I'm selling a vacation illusion. I'm ripping people off. And even after I knew I was ripping people off, I kept ripping people off. I did. Because the stress is not only on the buyer, there's a great deal of stress on the salesperson. If I don't make the deals today, I might not eat tomorrow. It was 100% commission-based. 100%. My colleagues, the people I worked with, they were all really wonderful people. They were family. They were good people. And it was at that moment I started to get this inkling of this first truth that I think you've got to understand to get to my universal truth at the end of this talk. And that is that every single person is both good and bad in the same lifetime. Think about yourself. When did you do something bad? I know you did. But more importantly, when did you have the best of intentions and you really started out to do something good, and then all of a sudden it had these horribly hurtful, harmful effects to others and would be deemed bad? Did it happen to you like that? Every person is good and bad in the same lifetime. Senator McCain just passed away. I'm sure you heard the buzz on this. His daughter gave this really powerful eulogy. I encourage you to watch it sometime after today. And in this eulogy, one story that really struck me was when she talked about being a child and she fell off her horse and she broke her collarbone. And John rushed her to the hospital like good fathers would do, mended her, took her home, and then he did something maybe not all of us would do. He said, "Get back up on the horse. Right now, you get back up on the horse. Immediately, get back up on the horse." His daughter said through her tears, she was so afraid. She was still uncomfortable, had pain from this broken collarbone, but she got back up on the horse. That's what Dad said to do. She said, "You know, he could have brought me home, and he could have sat me down, he could have said, 'Honey, I was a prisoner of war. I was tortured by the Viet Cong for years. I know pain. I know discomfort. I know fear.'" But he didn't. He didn't marginalize her experience that way, and he didn't condescend to her in that way. She was able to overcome her own fear and own that experience. I say all that not because of although there's maybe some parenting lessons in there, perhaps, but the reason I'm really telling you is because depending on what part of that story you enter into, which moment of that story you decide to jump into, you may see John good or bad. Even his own daughter could have thought, "What a horrible man to make me go through that." And she could have decided to label him bad. How many of us have labeled our parents badly because we remember that moment and we've forgotten all the good? Both good and bad in the same lifetime. With John McCain and the media, they covered his whole life. And everyone was quick to say he was a good man or he was a bad man. They would say, "Oh, well, he's partisan, he's bipartisan. He got a lot done. He got nothing done in Congress. He was a hothead and had a horrible temper and treated people badly. He was charitable and helped me." Because when we look at the course of a person's life, depending on when we enter and look at that moment, we can see good and bad. And that thing's subjective. We can decide ourselves whether they're good and bad based on the baggage we're bringing into the equation, into the situation, our own values and how we prioritize those values. We can determine whether that person's good and bad. I say he was both, just like you and just like me. Hold that thought, because this challenge I'm going to give you requires you to think like this. That is, walk between worlds. We have to engage with people who are not like us, who have different opinions, who think differently. We have got to walk between worlds. We have to, because in that interaction, in that investment with another, particularly when they have a completely opposite point of view, that investment is going to help us find common ground. How else will we find common ground without that investment? You see, that fight or flight, you can fight and not listen, Or you can isolate and withdraw and only be around those people that agree with you. And I guarantee you, you won't find common ground, and you won't find trust. Because the closer you are to common ground, the less time it will take to develop trust. Conversely, the further away you are from common ground, the further away from trust. And imagine that society that doesn't trust. When we don't trust each other, how do we behave? When you're on a project team at work, how well do you get things done if there's not trust on the team? What happens in our country when we can't trust each other? We can't find common ground together. How does that work out? Every single person is both bad and good in the same lifetime. We have to engage and learn about others to find common ground and to find trust. When I was an interrogator, there's a book that influences all of us. It was called The Master Interrogator, and it's written about a German interrogator named Hans Scharf. Hans Scharf did not believe in inhumane treatment of the enemy. He did not believe in abusing prisoners, and he didn't think it would work either. So he developed a different technique. He would put the enemy, us, U.S. soldiers, armed forces, he would take us to a relaxed atmosphere, and he would talk about the human condition. He would talk about emotions that we could all share together. He would develop common ground. He would develop trust in a civilized way. He also got information. But you know what else happened? He became friends with the enemy. So much so that he immigrated to the United States and helped create the U.S. Air Force interrogation course. Imagine that. The German interrogator. We still rely on a lot of those principles today. Trust building, rapport building, to develop relationships. Later in his life, which is really interesting to me, is he became a mosaic artist. Right? So it's like, wow. So he learned from all these different perspectives and how they're all different, and then did he come to this idea that the sum could be greater than its parts? Did he start to realize that you could take these fragments and these different objects and you could put them all together and you could create a new beautiful art form, one unified vision? That's incredible to me. Absolutely incredible to me that he did that. A mosaic artist. Kind of like, I don't know, the United States, where we have so much diversity, so many people with different opinions, different life experiences, different ideas, that we're all so different from one another, but we're all part of this thing, this American mosaic. We're all part of this one country, this one society. That's our strength, I think. And what's the glue that keeps all those pieces together? I think that's my universal truth, is the glue. And I will tell you, whether I was a high-pressured sales guy, whether I was an interrogator, whether I was a nonprofit board member, or a father, or a moderator of political debates, or a facilitator of tough discussions, or in my current role around servant leaders, leaders among leaders, this one universal truth has held firm throughout all of it, though it took me a while to figure it out. Everyone wants to be understood. Everyone wants to be understood. You want to be understood, and you want to be understood. You in the balcony, I know you want to be understood because I know you. Everyone wants to be understood. Let's do a little something. No need to talk. Take a look at the person to your left. Go ahead. Take a look at that person. Take a look at the person to your right. Go ahead and look behind you, because all they've seen are your ears. So give them a face. Give them that pretty face of yours. Now look up here. I guarantee you every single person you just looked at wants to be understood. Everyone. And when you hold that knowledge and you behave as such in your interactions, guess what will happen? You will remove stress for another. You will ease their stress in knowing that they want to be understood and making an attempt to understand them. It's that easy. You will be giving them a gift, and they will respond positively. Trust me, they will. Maybe not right away. Maybe not to the extent that you want, because trust takes time. Try it on for size. If you apply these techniques, if you walk between worlds and engage with others face to face that you don't think you have anything in common with, or maybe that is exact opposite opinion of yours, with the knowledge and recognizing that every single person is both bad and good in the same lifetime, and you pause your desire to be understood for long enough to understand them and give them the opportunity to be understood, if you do that, you will find common ground. You'll find trust. You know what you'll also find? You'll find new ideas, new ways of thinking. You'll find innovation. You'll find progress. So I think you've only got two choices, two courses of action. One, you can keep on keeping on and doing it like you've been doing. How's that working across the country? Or you can apply some of these lessons that I learned in my life. And when you do, when you take action, somebody is going to deem you someone is going to deem you bad, and someone is going to deem you good in the process, because that's what happens when we participate. Perhaps then you'll want to express yourself to a loved one, a friend, a colleague, your adversary, or perhaps from the red circle of TED, because you want to be understood. And I'm here to tell you, I'm listening. Thank you for listening.